Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Real Life Process Podcast. I cannot believe that this is already episode 218, and we are in the middle of February of 2023. Wow. 2023 is moving right along. And we're excited to be back with you here at the Real Life Process, where we talk about all things around leaning into our best real life, the knowing of our real self so that we can live into that everyday, ordinary peace and actually show up to do the calling that we are feeling called to do, the work that we are passionate about. And for the most part, we help faith focused coaches, leaders, and entrepreneurs to live out their best real life. But if you're listening to the podcast and you're not in one of those categories, you are still in the right place because the process is all about living out your everyday, ordinary life. That passage of scripture from Romans 12, 1 and 2 of taking your everyday, ordinary life, you're eating, sleeping, walking around life, and placing it before God as an offering. And that's what we, at our core, want to help you do. So, welcome to the podcast and welcome to this conversation here today, where I want to talk about and dive into the idea of how do we receive feedback? So, how can we, in some of these steps that I want to look at today, I want to look at about 4 different steps that we might apply to receiving feedback well. Now, we know that feedback can come from several different places, right? It can come from our spouse, it could come from a friend, it could come from a coworker, it could come from clients that you have. There's so many times that we have the opportunity to receive feedback, and it's an important tool. It helps us grow, it helps us improve, but it can be difficult sometimes to receive, especially if it feels a little bit critical. Depending on the frame of mind that we're in, maybe how our day has gone, sometimes feedback is hard to hear. But I want to just provide some practical tips for you on receiving feedback. I want to talk a little bit from my own story of how that's gone for me. And I'll be honest to say, sometimes I haven't received it the best. But let's look through these kind of 4 tips or 4 steps that we can look at. The first one I want to talk about is being open-minded. So the first step to receiving feedback is to approach whatever you've heard with an open mind. Take some of that emotion out of it. Take some of that, just really listen with an open mind. Feedback can be challenging, but it's important to remember that hopefully the person giving it is doing it from your best interest in mind and being willing to look at it through that positive lens of your best interest in mind is why they're even sharing it with you. I remember when I was writing the book that we just released in November. And when I was writing that book, one of the steps in the process was actually to send the book out to about 10 or 15 people, kind of in its raw state and form, and actually let people read through it. Was so hard to do. It was so difficult to say, this is my baby, and it's not even done yet, but can you read it? And can you give me some feedback on it? So I was asking for the feedback, and some of it came back, and I'll be honest, it was hard to hear that, well, this chapter didn't really resonate with me, or I'm not sure how you were explaining this part. But you know what happened from that feedback? Once I was able to sit with it and reflect on it, we'll talk about that in a minute, and go through all of these steps, I was able to receive it and say, you know, you're right. You're giving me an outside perspective, and I want to look at that and I want to take that in. And this is going to make it a better experience for more readers, more people who are going to take in this book. So it actually helped me in the end. Now, another place that sometimes I have to be open-minded about feedback, I'll be honest, is in my real life, in my personal relationships. You know, if I ask my husband for feedback on, you know, do you think I'm working too much? Or would you like me to not do these things in the evenings? And would you like me to, take off this certain day of the week or be present for this? I'm asking for his opinion or his feedback. If I share with him something from my business and I'm sharing about that and we're discussing it over dinner, and I'm asking for his feedback, then I don't want to receive it in a way that I feel that, I have to be ready for the feedback. Same thing if I'm asking for my daughter and I work together. And so the role that she plays on the team as my executive assistant and the role that I play as the visionary on our team of like saying, I need your feedback. I need you to tell me these things. And I need to be open minded when she says to me, I think we might want to do it this way, or maybe this process would be better. So keeping that open minded brainstorming kind of space is the great first tip or first step. The second is to listen actively. So active listening is an essential skill. It's actually something that I learned in my coach training, is to be an active listener, which is different than forming your thoughts in your head before the person ever gets done. It's a skill to receiving feedback. When someone is giving you feedback, listen carefully to what they're saying. Ask clarifying questions. So, what did you mean by that? Can you tell me more about that part? If necessary, ask questions. Don't interrupt. Now, this is my worst trait. I am an interrupter, and it is something that I've had to work on. It's something I've been called out on. And, I really appreciate those people that have spoke that into my life and said it in a very private setting to me of, Teresa, do you know that? And it's something that I work on and have to be aware of, even as I get sped up in a conversation or a discussion. So don't interrupt, don't defend yourself, but instead show that person that you're interested in what they have to say, even if it's difficult. This is one of the reasons that we love using some personality tools. If you know, I love the tool of the Enneagram, but there are other great ones out there that can help you know more about yourself. The DISC, the Kolbe, Strengths Finders, some of those things. We love the Enneagram for showing us those false sides of ourselves that we go, oh, that is what happens. And so for me and my personality and a very forward moving type, I really have to think about this skill of receiving feedback by actively listening, full present listening. So that's the second tip. The third thing about receiving feedback is to thank the person who's giving it. It's essential in building deep relationships, whether that be in your personal or your professional life, to be grateful for the feedback and to thank that person, showing them gratitude, even if it's considered critical feedback. Thank them for taking the time to give you feedback, for caring enough about you to help you grow. Going back to the story that I was telling you about having someone tell me I was interrupting. That was actually a mentor of mine. And I am so grateful for that feedback. I'll never forget that conversation. I can't say that it wasn't hard for me, that it wasn't difficult, but yet it was something I needed to hear and I needed to learn as a leader, as someone who was building a business and a coaching business, and being growing into writing a book and doing the things I'm doing. I needed to hear that. And it was hard, but I've been so appreciative. And I think about it often because it's not just about interrupting, it's about slowing down. So it goes to that place of, if I get sped up in my personality, I have to slow down and to take the pause. So I'm thankful for that feedback. I can struggle with this active listening piece. And so I have to work on it all the time. But then I have to be grateful for the feedback that I'm given. Sometimes that feedback comes from my spouse. And I have to be grateful in that place as well. I would hope that my spouse, that my dear friends, that my team would be able to give me feedback that I would listen and that I would be grateful for because we have a trusting relationship. So the last one, so that's number 3, is to thank the person. So first we have be open-minded, then we have listen actively, and then thank the person who's giving the feedback. And then the last one is the fourth one is take time to reflect. So after you receive feedback, take some time. Maybe you want to write down what that person said to you. Maybe you want to take some notes about it. Consider it carefully and try to understand where the other person is coming from. Now, here's what I want to say. Not all feedback is something that you have to take action on immediately. You might want to take into consideration, have I heard this from someone else, from more than one person? Have I heard this in multiple places or in different ways? Or is this just a one-time feedback? Where does this fall in the overall picture of things that I'm hearing? And so that's how you can reflect. Think about how you can apply that feedback and grow and improve. Because growth comes from change. I used to be part of a recovery program back when my son was struggling with addiction called Change Groups. And change comes from growth and improvement. And usually someone else is helping us to see that. Those who care about us and love us the most, whether that is to help improve our business, to help improve us personally, receiving feedback. Growth comes through change. And change happens over time in sometimes difficult conversations, and creating those safe spaces within your family, within your friendships, within your professional life to have those kinds of conversations. So what is this feedback inviting you to? What might you want to consider? Is it valid feedback? Have you heard it more than once? Those are all questions that you can think about as you take time to reflect. And then the last tip that we have is the 5th tip is take action. So don't just take in feedback and let it sit there and ruminate, but really take action. After you have taken time to reflect, take action on the feedback. Identify the steps that you can take to apply the feedback and make improvements. This will show the person that gave you the feedback that you're trusting them, that you're committed to growing, and that you value their opinion. Now, I want to share with you here as we kind of close out this episode, actually how we've applied this at the Real Life Process and just how this has played out for us. So we started our Real Life Process facilitator certification back in 2020, right in the middle of kind of the epidemic of COVID and all of the things. We decided to dive into creating the content that I had that I was writing into a book and making a certification program for people to facilitate, whether that be retreats or coaching or mentoring or in the ministry space and the leadership space, that they could take our content and they could use it as well. People were asking, and we created that process. And in the beginning, we created that as a whole year-long program. We felt like for us to really build a relationship, for people to be able to take the process that's written in the book, Do What Matters, Live from Rest, Not Rush, and apply it into their own lives, they would need an entire year for that program. So the very first program that we did, it was a year-long program. And it has actually stayed a 12-month program since 2020. But over the last year, as we wrote the book and we got the content in writing and I put it all together and I created a guidebook and we just released a film talking about the process and the writing of the book and all of the things that we're putting together, I began to see and hear feedback from those that were looking at the facilitator program. And listening to people say, you know, there's a time commitment that I'm not sure I can make for a full 12-month program. And there's a financial commitment that I'm not sure I can make for a full 12-month program. And so I started to hear that. And I still, in my heart, feel like the year-long program, the 12-month program, is the best program. But we, after hearing feedback, are making some shifts and changes. And actually, as this podcast episode is coming out, we just finished up a masterclass this past week where we walked through the 5 steps to building a thriving coaching business. And we went through the 5 C's of our content, of our certification, of our community, of our connection. All these C's that we come around, our coaching and helping people do all those things. And that is what we have in our certification program. But we are now offering it because of feedback and listening to our clients. We're now offering it as an option of a 6-month certification. Now, we encourage those people to go on and continue to be in our community, to be in what we call the network. And there'll be a couple of ways. So people can come in and just do the 6-month certification, or they can do the 6-month certification plus 6 more months in the network and build it out to that year-long program, which we believe is the premier program, because then you're not only getting the certification to say, I'm certified to facilitate this content, but you're actually walking with us in community and learning how to build out that business model to the best of its ability of how God wants you to share it out into the world and how he's going to partner with you in those tools to take that. So, but the whole point of this is we learned that by listening to feedback, by listening to people that were coming into the program and watching them, those that finished in 6 months, man, they were ready to hit the ground running. And those that strung it out for the entire year struggled a little bit more. So what can we learn from that? What can we listen to? So if you are a business owner, if you are an entrepreneur, don't forget to listen to the feedback of those that you're serving, whether that's in the ministry space, the leadership space, the coaching space, however you show up, listen to the feedback. I am so grateful and thankful for the first 6 to 8 people that took the risk with us to say, yes, I want to facilitate this content. I am all in. And they put it into their lives and started creating their modern day rules of life and living into it. And they have been people that have given us great feedback along the way. Feedback that even ended up showing up in the book that I wrote last year. Feedback into the components of the process. So it's part of doing life in community to me, is to create that trusted space where you can show up and you can hear feedback. And so look for those things. Look for them in your personal life, those friends that you can build in, those people blocks that we talk about in the process that you can have where you can hear great feedback, but also in your professional life, just like we've done with our program where we've said, we need to make some shifts. So you're going to be seeing those shifts for us out on our website. Maybe you are even one of those people that said, this was a year-long program. This was 12 months, and that was a little bit more of a commitment for me. Check out our new programs. You can just go to our Facebook page at thereallifeprocess.com and scroll down, and you'll see all about that program. Or if you're wanting to walk through the process one-on-one with one of our facilitators, click on that heading as well and find someone to take you through the process of creating your modern day rule of life. Part of that process is who you're going to hang out with, who's going to be in your people blocks, who are the important people in your life that can help you discern through good feedback your yeses and your nos. So thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Real Life Process podcast. We have a couple of things out on our website too, besides learning about our program and finding facilitators and coaching and all of that. We have a free download for you there. about your time management and your calendar. So make sure you get that. And also head to the website to watch our brand new 15-minute film about the real life process called Rested Success. We'll be back next week with more from the Real Life Process podcast. I can't wait to be in community with you. Head on over to our Facebook group and join our community there as well. Have a great day, everyone. Remember that every ordinary day has an extraordinary moment. You just have to look for them.